And hello and welcome to Hollywood Blockbusters. I am your host, Joe Hollywood, and once again I am joined by Imaginos Pete
Hey.
and Andrew Walker.
Hello.
And just when you thought it was safe to get back in the water, Jaws celebrates its 50th anniversary this year on June 20th, which, as we are recording this, is just, a week or two away. 50 years ago, which absolutely blows my mind. Today we're going to talk about the impact that the movie had on films in general, the summer Hollywood blockbuster, which pretty much didn't exist before Jaws. The first thing I really wanted to talk about, and you guys can't necessarily relate to this, but I wanted to talk about the experience of seeing Jaws in the movie theater when it came out. Now, I grew up in Hamtramck, Michigan, and on our main street, which was called Joseph Campo, we had one of those old-timey one-screen movie theaters that were very ornate, with the box office on the sidewalk where you would buy your ticket from a ticket vendor on the sidewalk, and then you would go in, and it was just one big auditorium. So if somebody tall sat in front of you, you couldn't see anything. And so that's where I saw Jaws. So I can't imagine when I saw it, it was early in its release, because by the time it would get to that theater, it probably had been out for a little while. But I was 9 years old, actually not quite 9, almost 9, when Jaws came out. And I remember my family going to the theater, meeting up with friends from school. You know, we would all hang out in front of the theater for a little while and catch up. And then we got our popcorn, our pop, and went in to see Jaws. And it is one of my most fond memories of seeing a movie in a theater. The jump scares, the reactions. There's the one scene in particular, spoiler alert, when they find the sunken boat and they go underwater to inspect the wreckage. And there's a big old hole in the boat, and they find a shark tooth. And when that head comes out of the boat, or the hole, I vividly remember popcorn flying in the air, including my popcorn. And it was probably the loudest unison, scream in unison in a movie theater I'd ever heard. And it was absolutely thrilling. It was like being on a roller coaster ride.
That Spielberg match, because it also had the right music that it came with, the sound effect.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that too. But
I love the story behind that, because Spielberg's just saying that, man, I can squeeze one more jump scare out of this. And his editor's going, well, what do you want to do? Let's do the Ben Gardner thing, because they had storyboarded it, and they were going to show his death in the storyboards, and it was actually kind of, vivid. Yeah. So he's in his editor's room, house. They get a boat, they put it in her swimming pool, and they pour milk, fill it with milk to give it that ocean look.
Yeah, kind of a cloudy
and they
effect.
have Dreyfuss come over and get in there.
Yeah.
And we'll film this. And I went, you guys are just, I can get one more. And then Spielberg said, oh, I might have overdone it.
Yeah, now what Spielberg had admitted to was he kind of regretted adding that scene because it lessened the impact of the later scene when Chief Brody is chumming the waters and you see the shark head come out of the water. That was supposed to be the movie's big jump scare. And then that leads up to the famous line, we're going to need a bigger boat. So adding the head coming out of the hole in the boat lessened the impact of the big scare later, and Spielberg kind of had regrets. But,
Oh, no, it went from a 99 to a 95. Wham, cry me a river, Stephen.
Now, back then, and I don't know, I would imagine they still do this today, but they would do test screenings in like Pomona, and they would take the audience reaction to heart and make tweaks and changes to the film. And I think that was one of the results of the test screening, was we need another scare somewhere in the movie. I read one article just today that Jaws caused some people to be hospitalized after the film, that it had such a strong psychological impact on some people who may have already been predisposed to some sort of mental condition.
But then Steven just tink.
Yeah.
Sent them over the edge.
They said one woman, after seeing the movie, would just spontaneously start screaming, "Shark, shark." Okay, all right. So it had such a visceral impact on the audience, and people were afraid to go into the ocean. People retaliated against sharks, like the shark population started to decline. Whether it was a great white or not, people just were going after sharks, and that was an unfortunate side effect.
Could you imagine someone like Joe standing there in line with his friends? Some lady comes out. They're waiting in line. It's a Blockbuster. It's wrapped around the block.
Right.
Out comes this lady. Shark! No! And him and his buddies. But man, we got to see this. This lady's like openly traumatized in the middle of Woodward.
She's a walking billboard. That's awesome.
Taking her off in the paddy wagon. Don't go in the water. Don't run, children.
Yeah.
And Joe standing there. 2, please.
Yeah.
I recently, when I knew we were doing this podcast, I asked my dad if he had seen Jaws in the theater, because I thought when I was a kid I remember him mentioning it, and he did. He didn't say if it was a regular theater or a drive-in, but he was only 20 at the time. He was born in 55, and I had recently rewatched the movie too, and he was like, "Yeah, it was pretty shocking to the audiences. Those 4 or 5 gruesome scenes."
Yeah,
and I said, "Yeah, looking back, that was 50 years ago. Like that was almost probably like a Psycho type,
sure,
shock or whatever." And I said, "Yeah," and I remember reading that people were really afraid to go in the ocean. He's like, "Yeah, it was a big phenomenon."
Yeah,
I can see Andrew's dad going all full Quint Indianapolis story. The shark's eyes, the doll's eyes, Andrew.
Doll's eyes.
You're just like, okay,
You're
Dad.
talking about the movie, right?
Dad, are you okay? It's like, you don't understand. Don't go into the water, son.
300 people went into the theater.
Yeah.
Only 100 came out. So in 1975, on June 20th, Jaws opened on 464 screens, including Canada, and has since, and I'm sure there have been re-releases and stuff, but has since earned close to $500 million on a $9 million budget, which was laughably over budgeted at the time. We're going to talk about that in a second. But imagine that the studio's like, "Steven, man, we approved $4 million. You're at $9 million. We're going to have to pull the plug on this." The movie comes out and earns the studio $500 million.
I did the math on that. What it made was 53 times the budget.
Yeah.
What's
your line? Your new
That's a great ROI.
Andrew's suit line.
But no, that's amazing.
It is
huge.
Yeah,
470 worldwide in that calendar year, 1975, which by today's standards would be about 2.8 billion.
I'm gonna look at. Did you already look at it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Now think about this. Steven Spielberg, at this point, had just wrapped on Sugarland Express, which, at the time of filming, hadn't even been released yet. And to be perfectly honest, I've never seen Sugarland Express. Have you? So
No.
I have no idea what it's about.
now, prior to Sugarland Express, the only major thing he had done before that, besides some episodic TV like Columbo and Night Gallery, he did the 1971 TV movie Duel.
Yep.
And it was on that pedigree that sort of endeared him to the bigwigs at Universal to give him a take or give him a chance on this movie. And Spielberg had, after kind of campaigning for it and saying he wanted to do it, he started having second thoughts. Like, I don't know if I'm qualified to do this. He was 26 years old. And so the studio then had to talk Spielberg, saying, "Look, you signed a contract and you're obligated to do this," and talked him into it.
His buddy, his mentor, Sid Sheinberg, who was, I think, the president of Universal, and basically said, "You need to do this movie. It's commercial." Because there was another movie that he wanted to do. I think had Burt Reynolds in it.
Yeah.
And he wanted to go do that. And then Sid's like, no. That's a great movie.
Yeah.
You need to do this for commercial.
Yeah, and I think it might have been Sid who said, if you do this movie, you will have your pick of any movie you want to do after that. And so he got talked into doing it, but he almost had a nervous breakdown doing it because, as we'll talk about in a moment, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. But ironically, it was for the betterment of the film. It resulted in a better movie.
I love that the producers in the 70s thought, we can wrangle a shark, right? It's like Flipper. We can come here, buddy.
Yeah.
Jump through the ring.
They wanted to get a trained white, a great white.
And I was like, that doesn't work like that. Don't get in the water with the great white and poke him. Like, come on, jump.
They call him Brucey.
Brucey. I wonder if ever anyone has ever really trained a shark.
I don't think so. I don't think it's possible.
I don't.
There are a few online shark whisperers, and it's not a long time career.
Because you can do that with porpoises, dolphins, some whales, I guess. But
because you're going to catch a shark on the wrong day. That's all it is. You're going to catch a shark, and it's not even the great white. It's probably like a tiger or a mako, and then it's over.
Yeah. Yeah. So they quickly went to basically they cast 3, for lack of a better term, rubber sharks that had hydraulics in there so they can kind of thrash and move.
Although Steven did kind of add to that. He's like, I want to film this in ocean water. I'm like, Steven, I don't know if electronics in water work. Nah, it'll work.
Yeah.
And then breaks one of them with George. Because George, buddy goes like, hey, this is a great shark. Can I look in there? Yeah, go ahead, George. Look inside that mouth. And I'm going to close it. And then he snaps the jaw and like, uh-oh. And runs off. Hey, Steven, the shark's not. Someone broke the jaw. Really?
Yeah. Now, they said one of the reasons they picked what was the location there? Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. When they began filming in May of 1974, they picked that particular location because they said that the sand went way far out. So you can be pretty far off the shore and only be in a few feet of water.
Shallow, yeah.
So that allowed them to, create rigging and stuff under the water. I think one of the sharks was like on a track or a dolly or something like that. But yeah, because of the problems with the shark, Spielberg went Hitchcockian and was forced to hint and insinuate that there was something just under the surface of the water, which made for a much, much better movie.
Much more suspense.
Yeah.
He has
action. Yeah.
He has a history of asking some insane things from his cameramen and some of his special effects people. So I need you to create the way so I can film the water just above the waterline. Can you do that? Yeah, Steven, no problem. I'm going to drown, but sure, I'll do it for you.
I noticed there was one scene where that happened. It was right at the sound would come in and then out, in and out a couple times.
Yeah, because he wanted to make it seem like that's the shark, and then he did that
at water level. Yeah,
he did that. He did that in Jurassic Park. That whole thing's like, hey guys, when the T-Rex comes in, the impact tremors. Can you do that? Oh yeah, no problem, Steven.
Yeah,
Steven.
I remember that too, and I was thinking this looks kind of familiar. I think there's some DNA. Jurassic Park DNA in this.
I love that poor bastard's like the night before shooting that impact tremor. He's like, I figured it out. I'm going to take a guitar string, run it through the Jeep, and I'm going to lie underneath that pling, pling, pling.
Yeah, and you would think after the lessons learned on Jaws, Spielberg ran into similar problems with the T-Rex, where in some scenes they had a full-size animatronic T-Rex, and when they started spraying water on it, it started seizing up like it was having
shakes.
Convulsions. And Spielberg should have been like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that."
Stan Winston's like this. Oh, we'll fix it, Steven. Just weeping in the corner as he goes off. No, but Jaws. You're right. As what he demanded and what he did, but it paid off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. It all worked out in the end, and basically made Steven Spielberg. The movie was based on the 1974 novel Jaws by Peter Benchley, and he was invited in to write the first draft of the screenplay. But I read an interview with him where he's like, I didn't know what I was doing when it came to a screenplay. I didn't know how to give voice to these characters. And so he did sort of the first draft, and then they brought other writers in to punch up dialogue and to add some humor. And
Carl Gottlieb, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so they punched up the script. And if you look carefully when you watch the movie, Peter Benchley has a cameo. Did you know that? He plays the reporter on the beach. I think he's wearing glasses and stuff. That's the author, Peter Benchley, making his cameo.
When I read that, it was based on a book, because I didn't know that. The book came out the book wasn't even out.
No,
when they started to adapt it. I'm like, wow, you never hear of stuff like that today. If anyone adapts a book to a movie, it's at least been out like 10 years.
Yeah.
Minimum, you know?
Yeah.
In that documentary, Peter Benchley's wife is going, what if a shark? And she goes, oh, honey, you might want to think of something else. That'll never work. I'm like, all right, honey, thank you.
Yeah, so a lot of credit has to go to Richard Zanuck and David Brown at Universal Studios. They had gotten wind of this book. There was an article in some magazine that was describing this book, which was set to be published, and whoever the author was of the article said it would make an interesting movie. So somehow Zanuck and Brown got their hands on a preview copy of Jaws and just fell in love with it and said, so they offered the film rights purchase to Peter Benchley before it even hit bookstores.
Right.
And then Spielberg saw the copy in the Universal office. He picked it up and said, yeah, I want to be part of this.
Didn't it say he read it in like,
yeah.
Did he read it in one night or those guys read it in one
Both
night?
of those guys read it in one night.
Yeah.
Now, I laughed at a quote, and I think it was applying to these two guys. They said they read it once and made the decision. They said had they read it again, they probably would have rescinded their offer because upon subsequent readings, they're like, this is unfilmable. We can't film on the ocean, these guys hunting a shark.
Right.
But by then, they had made the offer and moved forward with it, and Spielberg had to figure out how to do it.
Make it work.
Yeah. So... as I said earlier, 3 full-size sharks were built for the film. Due to delays and problems, the budget ballooned from $4 million to $9 million, which sounds quaint today. And the original film shoot was scheduled to take 55 days because they wanted to beat a looming writer's strike.
Yep.
And the production went from 55 days to 159 days. And from what I heard, the locals at Martha's Vineyard were like, enough already.
Why are you still here?
Get the hell out of here.
The season's even done now. What are you even doing here? And Sid Sheinberg, for all his endurance saying, I want you to do this movie, came over to see the shoot and saw Gottlieb and Spielberg writing pages for next day's shoot.
And that was another blessing from the delays in production, was it gave them time to rewrite scenes and punch them up.
And it's great. Sid's going, oh my God, wait, this is what you're filming tomorrow? You're writing this right now? You haven't rehearsed?
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. And those actors were pros to be handed these pages and knock them out of the park.
When Shaw was sober.
When he was sober, yeah. We can get to that in a second.
And if... what's his name wasn't being a jerk?
Dreyfuss.
I heard he was difficult to work with.
Yeah.
Well, him and Shaw didn't get along.
Yeah, right. And from what I heard, Shaw was jealous of Dreyfuss because he had finished some movie and he was getting rave reviews. And for some reason, Shaw was jealous of his rave reviews, so that caused friction on the set. Speaking of the 3 full-size sharks, kind of a neat little footnote on that is if you were to visit the Academy Museum in L.A., which, not to brag, I was there on opening day, which was fun. And
no, not a brag at all.
And hanging from the ceiling in sort of the lobby foyer of the museum is a full-size Jaws shark, Bruce. And the story behind that, from what I've read, is that that shark that's at the museum was cast from the same molds where they made the original 3 full-size sharks for the movie.
Oh, nice.
For some reason, I don't think it was used during production. Maybe it was used for promotion, but it ended up like mounted on the roof of some scrapyard, like some junkyard somewhere in L.A., and just kind of weathered in the elements. And somehow the Academy made an offer and got it and restored it, and is now hanging from the ceiling of the museum. And it was cast from the original molds that the movie shark was cast from. So cool little footnote there. Now let's talk about post-production. Obviously, one thing that put the movie over the top was John Williams. And when you hear Spielberg and Williams talk about that meeting when when John Williams is like, Steven, let me play what I got. And he goes, dum dum. What do you think? And Spielberg's like, that's hilarious. Now let me hear the score.
Let's hear the real one.
da. And Spielberg thought he was out of his mind. Like, no, you can't do that. And John Williams fought for it, and it became iconic. And it was
John, are you on that ayahuasca right now? Now's not the time.
And think about that, being in the theater watching the movie and the cameras, showing the perspective of the swimmer, and you hear, duh, duh. Something's about to go down. Like the movie just the music triggers that response. Like, oh no.
You say that, and unfortunately, maybe fortunately, depending on your perspective, there's a generation now walking around that when you play that infamous tune, they go, I think I know that, but I'm not sure what that is.
You know what, though? You got me wondering, though. Even if someone was not familiar with Jaws and you said, I want to play this music for you, it's still going to be ominous to them. Yeah. It's going to be like, okay, all right, you could stop the music.
They're like, is this like is this Psycho?
Yeah.
Is this murder?
And what I find so fascinating about movie scores and how they can manipulate an audience. But I may have told this story before. It was around Halloween, and my nephew, and he was probably 2 or 3 years old, was in the back seat of my car. And I was playing a CD in my car of like Halloween songs, Halloween music. And the theme from Halloween started playing. Dun, 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 dun. And my nephew was like, Uncle Joe, turn it off. Turn it off. That music, whatever qualities those notes had, freaked the hell out of my nephew in the back seat. And I just found that so fascinating. That those tones, somehow these composers give sort of a quality to certain tones and notes and know that they elicit a certain response. I find that fascinating.
I do too. And I have thought about that before. And if you were to play that same music to somebody, if you had a time machine and play that to somebody in the 1600s, would they have the same reaction as somebody today?
Right.
Like, is it something innate, or is it something that we've picked up culturally?
I think it's innate. I think it's an instinct. I think we respond. Whether it's visually or whether you smell something or you hear something, there are things that trigger responses in a human being. And somehow composers have figured out that certain notes trigger some sort of a response.
The great ones do.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with anything that both of you said, but I want to point something out to our audience that both Joe and Andrew now have couch traumatizing children by saying, I'm just seeing what music does to children. It's fascinating. Joe's nephew is in the backseat trusting Uncle Joe to go have a great time. And he's like, I want to play this really creepy ass music. And then there's the kid, what's going on? No. I'm like, come on, kid, you can toughen up. But this makes sense. Your mom took you to movies like that.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. Now I'm trying to still search for the elusive brown note. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that.
That's not a rabbit hole you want to go down.
Familiar with the brown note?
Is that a name that Nick used to strip to? Or, no, go by?
My stripper name was far more glamorous.
Okay,
had sparkle. That's the only clue I'm going to give.
Now I think MythBusters touched on this, and they couldn't prove anything. But there's a legend out there that a certain musical note will make you let loose of your bowels, and they have not proven that just yet, but there's a rumor out there. But I'm sure John Williams has been searching for it. Like, imagine making an entire film-going audience just let loose at the same time.
There are people that did void themselves at certain points in that movie,
mm-hmm.
and then Spielberg, the sicko part of him, likes to go and watch certain screenings and stand in the back to see how things are.
Yeah.
And when the Kittner boy got mutilated, one of the audience members ran out, and Spielberg's going, I might have overdone it. And the guy barely made it out of the auditorium before he yacked.
Yeah.
And he went, I might have overdone it. I'm like, Steven, you monster.
Yeah. Of all the gruesome scenes in the movie, like I said, obviously the head coming out of the hole hit the audience in a certain way. But watching Jaws again recently, and I'm sure I'll watch it again this summer, the one that kind of gives me a gut punch is the instructor that's like in the canoe or whatever.
Yeah.
And the shark knocks him out of the boat, and then you see that leg like settle to the bottom of the. I don't know why that hits me as hard as it does. It kind of freaks me out a little bit.
And thank God he stopped there. There, that Pomoa test audience, I don't know how many of them are still alive, but they saw an original version that attack was a lot more gruesome.
Yeah. Same thing with the Kittner boy. There are still images of the Kittner boy on a raft with the shark coming out of the water and clamping its jaws, and there's blood and all sorts of stuff, and they had to tone that down quite a bit. No one wants to go into a movie theater and see a 10-year-old boy get
because
eaten by a shark.
had the original Jaws been done the way Steven imagined without the shark working, keep that part in there. You talk about trauma. That movie might have got an R rating.
Yeah.
So I can compare that to another Spielberg project. Remember in Jurassic Park when towards the end when they're trying to get the power turned back on?
Yeah, Sam.
Yeah, Sam Jackson's arm, yeah.
That's kind of what they reminded me of, too.
Yeah.
Or I should say had a similar effect on me. Yeah.
And I think they may have filmed Sam Jackson's death scene, but it didn't end up in the film. But
fair enough. But yeah, no.
Yeah.
The swimming instructor part, especially the way that scene was crafted and edited.
Yeah.
And you finally see that's the first actual sight of the shark.
Yeah.
Before the infamous reveal with Schneider.
And the whole lead up to it, so there was a false alarm where the kids were doing a hoax, and so everyone lets their guard down.
They should have shot one of them.
Right, just to teach them a lesson. Yeah. But then there's that girl who, from what I understand, was like plucked from extras, and she sees the real shark and starts screaming. And because of this hoax that had just happened, everyone's kind of slow to react to the actual shark, and that's what leads up to the shark attacking the rowing team or whatever.
But the way they filmed that was brilliant, because even Brody goes, "Oh, what now?"
Yeah.
But that extra, whoever she was, the fear in her voice, that sense of urgency, she's like, "Shark!"
Yeah,
and you're like,
she did a great job.
And then you have Williams coming, dun 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 dun, and then you just see Brody start picking up pace, running, and I'm like, that is great filmmaking.
You're giving me goosebumps. I got goosebumps just replaying it in my head. And then, of course, I think this is when the Kittner kid was attacked, where Spielberg used that Hitchcockian effect where he had the camera on a dolly on tracks, and he did the simultaneously dolly in as it zoomed out, which keeps Roy Scheider framed, within the frame, but then the background changes, and it's really disorienting. And Hitchcock had used that in Vertigo, and it's one of the most brilliant shots, because imagine being in the audience and not fully understanding how that shot was pulled off if you're just a run-of-the-mill moviegoer, and that just throws you off, and then you see the shark attack and everything. So yeah, that's going to affect an audience, and he really manipulated the audience with this film.
Jaws could be a masterclass in filmmaking, but Spielberg would never do it, because the moment you ask him to talk about Jaws, he'll start crying. Like, don't make me go back. I can't go back there.
I went to years of therapy, and you're bringing it all back up. Now, obviously, there are accolades for this film. On Rotten Tomatoes, 97 and 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, which this movie could qualify, Nick, for 100%. But
he's gonna
come on,
say,
man. I'm like 91%. I want to punch that 8% in the face. Like, what movie are you watching?
I'll give you 99. Just don't do the full 100.
Now, when the Oscars rolled around the following spring, shockingly, Jaws was nominated for Best Picture, but Spielberg was not nominated for Best Director, which is a slap in the face, and might have been the Academy's snobbish way of saying, "Oh, he's 26. He'll get another chance down the road." But
I mean, they weren't wrong. But
how do you? And he went years without a nomination or a win. I mean, even after E.T. and Close Encounters and all these movies, it wasn't until Schindler's List where he finally got some Academy recognition. Like the most successful director in film history, year after year after year, would get snubbed by the Academy.
Jurassic Park wasn't nominated for anything?
I don't think he was nominated for Best Director or anything. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up, but he clearly wasn't recognized until Schindler's List, and then of course Saving Private Ryan and Lincoln and stuff like that. But here was a guy producing enormously popular, crowd-pleasing films and routinely being snubbed by the
But that's the thing. I
Academy.
think they said that you're a popcorn muncher.
Yeah.
So is it really art? And I was like, wow, that's such a rogue take to
Yeah. So it did win Oscars for Best Original Score. So that's John Williams. Film Editing and Sound. It was nominated for Best Picture, but not Best Director. And, of course, it's become a beloved classic. And I believe it is in my top 10 favorite/greatest films of all time. It's a movie I've watched over and over and over, time and time again.
It's one of those movies that's in the 50th anniversary. It's coming out now. I think they're remastering certain things, and I never got a chance to see it, even when it came out in theaters. I wasn't born yet, but then when I was in India, I didn't get a chance to see it because by the time it came back, it wasn't really showing as much, and you go see other movies. But now they're going. I think like in Imagine Rochester Hills, they have an IMAX theater. I think it's some of these, souped up ones. They're going to put it out there.
Yeah, they're re-releasing it. Yeah,
I would love to go see it.
Now, let me ask you this. I shared my experience with seeing it for the first time in a movie theater. Do you have memories of seeing it for the first time and what your reaction was?
Yeah. I saw it when I was in India, and it scared the hell out of me. I couldn't even go into the bathtub. No, because what's underneath the water. There's a story. When we moved to India, we had to stay at a hotel before our house was ready. So it was a nice hotel. It was one of those 5-star fancy places. That's great. Never been there before. My brother wanted to, was trying to get me how to swim, threw me into the deep end of the pool where it's dark water. No matter how, I'm like, oh, I don't like where this is. So my dad, God love him, was coming to save his son, swam out to me, but then swam and then put his hands, for anyone who's watching TV, imitated a fin and swimming out to me. Had I crapped myself in that pool, they would have had to drain that pool. And so I'm just telling everyone out there, you're lucky I had a strong bowel because I should have done it. I would have taught my family a lesson.
Talk about brown note.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
They'd be like, sorry, the pool can't be used. Some little boy went 2 in it.
So it had a lasting impact on you.
Even to this day, when I go out to the beach, I don't night swim. I will not night swim. I don't want to go in water where I can feel cold underneath my soles of my feet.
Yeah.
Of course, now I see TikTok videos of sharks coming right up to where you can see sand, and I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
But these are like 4 or 5 footers. But no, if I go out to swim, and because I've been out in the Caribbean before, if I feel cold water underneath the soles of my feet, I'm like, yeah, it's too deep.
No, when I was in my 20s and maybe even my 30s, I would jump into the ocean and swim, and I'm kind of done with that now. When you realize the deeper you go out in the ocean, the lower you become on the food chain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan of that. And I remember one time being in L.A., we were at Leo Carrillo State Beach in Malibu, me and a couple of buddies, and we were walking along the shore, and we saw something in the distance, and I'm like, I'm not going near this. Now, this was on the shore, on the sand. And so my 2 buddies went to inspect it, and it was a large sea lion with a large bite taken out of it that had washed up on the beach and was laying there rotting. And that told me that there was something that took that bite just offshore here. I'm not going. I'm getting to the point where I don't want to wade in the water. It's terrifying.
I've seen people do the shark cage diving stuff, and you'll see one of these hair raising ones where a shark gets caught. One of the medium ones.
Yeah,
you're gonna get one of those big guys, and all it has to do is take a run at it. This cage is registered from. Like, you don't know that. You didn't have a 25-footer slam into that thing at full speed. It'll be fine.
Now, speaking of which, you just brought something. You made me remember something in the articles that I was reading. So, there's that cage scene where Richard Dreyfuss's character goes into the cage. Well, they had like a B unit films some of those cage scenes, and they used like a small person to make these live sharks look bigger than they were. And apparently, while the empty cage was submerged, a live great white attacked the cage, got tangled up in the cables, started thrashing and everything. They got it all on film, and they're like, this is awesome footage, but we can't use it because there's nobody in the cage. And Steven Spielberg said, no, we're using it. So they rewrote the scene and had Richard Dreyfuss's character escape from the cage. And then they cut in that live, real footage of a real shark getting
They had him live
cage.
because the original character died.
Yeah.
But also, the original character was kind of an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
The way he was written by Peter Benchley.
I read that in the book he has an affair with Chief Brody's wife in the book.
I read that too, yeah.
And it shocked me when I read that.
And Vincent, they wanted to cast him, the guy in Airwolf. I forgot his...
Jan Michael Vincent.
Jan Michael Vincent, and he looked the part, and then Richard Dreyfuss comes in looking like Richard Dreyfuss, and like, there's Hooper.
Like he just rolled out of bed.
Yeah. And so I'm glad that's a great change.
I think if that film were to be made today, they would have kept that in.
Probably.
Oh, yeah.
Because
it's salacious. Why
not? Right. Or if it was on an HBO movie or an HBO series, they'll definitely have the sex in there.
Yeah. Now, it did have some fairly sexy moments early in the film with, I think the character's name was Chrissy, running on the beach.
Oh, yeah.
And like I think you just posted on Facebook, and I'm right there with you. I remember watching the film a year or so ago, and I'm like, man, I don't remember this being so gratuitous. Like,
I remember.
It was just for a couple seconds.
Yeah, but still, it's almost like in that time period of movies, 70s and 80s, it's almost like the filmmakers would negotiate with an actress, like, okay, how many times are we going to see you naked? Because that's what the audience is expecting. So they had this, nude scene, and think about that. It's almost like those Pulp Fiction, book covers where there's violence but sex, like on the cover of these magazines.
Yes.
And so imagine having a woman that is nude swimming in the water getting eaten by a shark. It creates this weird juxtaposition of emotions. Like you're like, ooh, she's kind of hot, and then all of a sudden you watch her thrashing around getting eaten by a shark. That's horrible.
That's why they put a lot of those type of scenes in horror movies.
Yeah.
And they captured that so well. Because then the autopsy scene by Hooper, when he comes in later and he looks at he says, and he's detailing how much is gone.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, this shark went to town.
Yeah. This was not a motorboat injury. This is a shark attack.
It wasn't Jack the Ripper.
And then I thought it was funny. He asked for a drink of water while he's I'm like, oh my gosh.
And he's like, and it's a non-frenzied feeding, which means this thing took its time to.
Right. Yeah. So, and there's, man, I hate to bring this up, but there's a very disturbing video that was circulating on TikTok and YouTube. I think it was in Italy, where a guy was swimming, and there were tourists and stuff overlooking this bay where he was swimming, and he got attacked by a shark with everyone having their phone out recording it, and you witness his demise in the jaws of a shark.
Jeez.
And eventually they caught the shark, and they had the guy, bits of the guy inside the shark, and they killed it.
I've seen TikTok videos and YouTube videos of people on these little paddle boards, which are about 2 inches off the water level, the water surface, and going, and then you see the shark come by. I'm like, are you trying, for God's sakes? And you see sea lions. And I go, look, honey, sea lions. Like, this is someone's feeding ground. You are someone's refrigerator.
They're trying to escape from a predator, Andrew, do you have any vivid memories of seeing Jaws for the first time?
Vivid? No. So I saw it in college with my girlfriend at the time. It was one of those things that she would give me as much crap as you guys do for not having seen a movie. Oh, Andrew, we got to watch it. So we watched it, but it was super late at night, and I think I was just kind of falling in and out of sleep.
Yeah.
So it's not one of those movies where I'd be like, oh yeah, I've watched it in a sense that I could tell you.
So then, if you saw
most of the plot, because I couldn't.
Maybe recently when you just
I watched it,
how did you feel then when you were watching?
I loved it. There were just a couple little beats that I remembered. I remembered, like you were talking about, the leg falling to the bottom.
Yeah.
Because when I was a kid, my dad was watching it on TV. He's like, "Oh, Andrew, wait, watch this."
Oh, geez.
So that's always been vivid. But I didn't. When I was just watching it, it was last night. Yeah, I did not know that when it was coming up. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of shocked. I'm like, "Oh, there's that." I totally forgot about that. Now, 30 years later.
That's what's fun about revisiting a film.
Oh,
yeah.
It was slightly more gruesome than I would have guessed.
I felt the same way. For some reason, revisiting it, I'm like, I don't remember it being this gruesome, and it makes me wonder if maybe my brain was like blocking stuff.
They every time you saw it on TV, they edited it.
Yeah,
you'd only go to the blood
that might
scene.
be it too. Yeah,
because when you start saying, "Oh, it's Jaws on TV," I'm going to watch it, and then you see, "Oh, hey, he screams," and it's just blood in the water. You don't have to see the drop part.
You're right. I think people get so used to seeing the TV version of something, and that when they finally see it uncut and uncensored, they're like, "I don't remember some of this stuff."
So, I know I've said this before, but when I was growing up, we didn't have cable, so I had only seen The Predator on like the local Channel 20. You know how they would play movies on the weekends, but we recorded it. And then years later, when I saw the unedited version, I'm like, "Whoa,
that's a different movie."
Yeah, where was that?
Carl Weathers got gutted and lifted up. Oh my God, they blew his arm off.
The TV version was 45 minutes long.
So yeah, when Carl Weathers' arm gets blown off, the edited version, it just shows his arm and gun like right here,
still firing.
It doesn't show it still firing.
Oh, wow.
It's just like 2 seconds. It just shows it fall to the ground, and it's zoomed in.
Huh.
On the original, it shows it
severed
cut off from up here. And that was the first time I ever realized, oh, well, they cropped this big time.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know they did that for movies.
Yeah, that's why they say modified to fit your screen. Yeah.
And there was a crude joke that Shane Black, who was the first guy to die, that he says in the movie. I'm not going to repeat it.
Yeah.
Not in the, of course, nothing.
Exactly. That's why it's very hard for me to watch some of my favorite movies on broadcast television, because even like Back to the Future, in the movie he keeps there's a few times early on where he's like, "Jesus Christ, Doc," and then on TV it's like, "Jeez Louise," and they change that stuff, and it's hard to watch. Like, give me the original unedited version every time.
The FCC is trying to stick to those 10 Commandments.
I guess thou shalt not say the Lord's name in vain when you're Marty McFly.
One of the most I want to get your opinion on this scene when the two guys go out there with the Christmas ham and throw out there. He's like, he's taking. Look, the moment when he gets, I saw this with my mom. I remember, and she's like, "Oh, what? Oh my God, what's going on?" And it says, it turns the dock.
That dock turns around and starts coming back.
Full Jaws theme. Dun, 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 dun. At that point, you're yelling at the TV, "Swim, man, swim!"
And
swim,
the guy's
Charlie.
trying to pull the other guy, and he's kicking his legs. And
the warden's like, "Swim, Charlie, trust me. Don't look back, Charlie. Just swim." I'm like, "Holy!"
So effective, so good.
Yeah, and the dock, the dock itself almost like went up on the beach.
No, it did.
Well, it breaks loose at some point,
right,
and then it just drifts to the shore. Yeah.
But wasn't the
shark.
The shark was underneath it, pushing it. Right?
It's meant to look like, but it's actually a little bit ahead of it because it's dragging it with it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's dragging. Oh,
yeah.
The meat's tied to it. It grabbed the meat and took the whole dock off.
Yeah, and so at some point it's separated from the dock, so you see the dock just drift to the shore and kind of stop. But that's a great scene.
And Spielberg finally admitted that one scene where the fishing wire starts to go tick tick tick, and when they first go out on the boat.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, "Chief, get behind me." And so Hooper's like, "Oh, it's just it's." So that was actually the shark. Spielberg later admits that the shark was there.
Yeah.
So Hooper was wrong.
Yeah. Now let's talk about that. Let's talk about performances. So obviously the movie starred Roy Scheider, Richard Dreyfuss, and Robert Shaw as Quint, which, in my opinion, Quint is one of the greatest film characters of all time, but all the performances are great and really made you care about these characters when they're on the orca hunting the shark later in the movie, and the way they sort of bond and stuff. And that was what critics praised about the movie, was that the character development and that we cared about what happened to these characters. But like Robert Shaw is Quint. As you mentioned earlier, he had a drinking problem, and for the most part, he was fairly professional on the set. But there's a
kind of like Errol Flynn.
Yeah. Now there was a famous story about that the monologue that he has about the Indianapolis going down. It was torpedoed, and all the sailors are bobbing in the water. It's such a magnificently written monologue, and from what I've read, Robert Shaw did the first take of that, just smashed, and was embarrassed, and they were like, I don't know if we can use this, and it was such a key moment in the film. And from what I read, Robert Shaw came back like the next day and said, look, I'm embarrassed, and I'd like another go at it. And they were like, okay. And then he delivers that monologue that is so iconic, the shark's eyes, the dead eyes, the doll's eyes, black eyes roll back in its head. And just the story of the Indianapolis, which a lot of people might not have been familiar with at the time. And
do you think his character knew JFK? Wasn't he on the Indianapolis when it?
No.
I don't think so. No, he was on PT 109 JFK.
Who, wasn't there was somebody famous on the Indianapolis?
Well, I have to
it
look
probably
it up,
was.
but I don't think it was.
I'd be surprised if it was Kennedy.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was Kennedy.
Maybe he was.
You think his brother? Are you talking about Joe Kennedy?
I think
his older brother.
I'll
think
have to
he
look that up.
was on the Indianapolis, but before.
Oh,
like
okay.
Earlier in his career. But
you got your phone in your hand. You don't have to look
yeah.
it up. But yeah, that monologue was so great, and just other little things. Like, I was surprised to find fairly recently when Quint sings a song. It's like a bar ditty, not the swimming with bow-legged women, even though that's hilarious. But he sings like a little kind of an Irish song. There's a movie that he did years before where he sings the exact same song in that movie. So that was a little throwback of Robert Shaw throwing back to an earlier performance.
It's a lovely
that he
Easter
had
egg.
done. And when I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And so, his performance was so great. And he passed away not too long after the movie was released.
I just read that. Yeah, he was only 51.
Yeah, but he had his issues and lived a hard life.
Yeah.
So it's a shame that he, I don't know if he fully got to appreciate the impact that movie and his performance had, but he really contributed quite a bit. And when we first see him and he drags his nails across the chalkboard.
Oh my
I was going to mention that.
Oh man, that made everybody in the audience squirm.
It still does. And then they're like, we're going to digitally remaster. Leave that part alone. Just actually dampen that though. That's okay.
Yeah. So, that's so many great lines. And then, of course, Richard Dreyfuss, when Brody says to Hooper, talk to those guys who are going out to dynamite the shark or whatever, and he's trying to talk them out of it, and they and they just kind of smart off to him, and he's like, "They're all gonna die."
Yeah, I love
he
because he's like,
walks away.
Gentlemen, the policeman has asked us to not load that boat. Yeah, get out of here. Well, can you tell me a good place to eat? Yeah, you just walk straight ahead. He's like,
off the dock.
It's like, they're all gonna die. He walks and he goes, hey, those guys on the boat? Yeah, I'm gonna leave the dock alive.
Yeah. And then when he's like, I think he's like steering the boat, Hooper is, and Quint's like yelling demands at him or something, and he breaks into his WC Fields like, I don't have to take this abuse much longer. And when he crushes the styrofoam cup in his hand after Quint crushes a beer can, I don't know how much of that was Spielberg and how much of that was Dreyfuss, but he added a lot to the film. He was great.
They just let them run because they didn't get along. So sometimes they channel that in there. So they were like, just let it roll. Mm-hmm. But that's Carl Gottlieb too, putting that humor in. So when they go out to go find Ben Gardner's boat, it's like, I'm not drunk enough. Yes, you are. I can't go out there. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Just that fast.
Yeah.
You enjoy the relationship that they built.
Yeah. Now I'm going to kick myself. Maybe you can look this up, Andrew. But there was an editor on the film. I think it was a female.
That's where he was filming. In
what's her name? You're going to have to look up the editor on Jaws. But they said that it became another movie in the editing room. They said that through editing, she was able to add humor where there was fear and terror. And then in scenes where there was humor, she added, she flip-flopped it. So she added humor here and added terror here and really kind of made the movie that we all know and love in the editing room. Do you have it?
Yeah, her name was Verna Fields.
Yep. Verna Fields.
So she had close ties with Peter Bogdanovich, Lucas, and Spielberg.
Okay. So knowing that Jaws won an Oscar for film editing and sound, that is her accolades.
Because they said she could remember scenes and on different reels.
Yeah.
And said, oh, I know where to put that. And Spielberg's like,
Wow.
yeah, on you go.
Yeah, yeah. And think about this. This wasn't non-linear editing. This wasn't Adobe Premiere. This was splicing
Yep.
film to create the finished
Reels
product.
and reels and reels.
That's amazing to me. That's incredible.
And a lot of the editors were smokers.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
boy.
why some
With
of those.
volatile film.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's just no that Jaws is just it's a magnificent movie if you can watch it unedited, and if you have a home theater for if you have the privilege and the good fortune to see that on a big screen, and if you have a home theater,
Right.
or you can put
Yeah, when they
noise canceling
re-release
sounds.
it, go see it in the theater
Yeah.
with a crowd. And I hope there are some
Yeah.
younger people who might be
Yes.
seeing it for the
And
first
there
time.
are.
Yeah.
God bless them, because they all know. They know one thing. They vaguely remember the theme, or they know the line. You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Oh, yeah.
That's that line. You see them, like that's where it came from.
Yeah. And the fun thing, too, with the 50th happening this year is you're starting to see a lot of merchandise. They re-released the Jaws game. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but when I was a kid, there was a plastic shark, and you would attach these rubber bands to its lower jaw, and you would throw all kinds of junk in there, like plastic junk into the jaw, so there was enough weight to keep the jaw down. And then you had like a hook, and you'd go in there and you'd lift one of the pieces of junk out, and somebody would go in to get a piece, and the jaws would slam shut on you, and you lost. They re-released that, but they recast the shark to look exactly like the shark in the film. And they got like the license plate and some other stuff that goes in the Jaws. So it's really cool to see merchandise back in stores. I just recently picked up, there's a action figure company called NECA that just released Quint and Hooper in 6-inch action figure form. I had to grab those. There's Jaws popcorn buckets appearing in theaters. It's really cool to see this interest in Jaws.
Yeah, what you
again.
described is a more traumatic version of Operation,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're right. And then have it
which was
slam
every
shut.
child's introduction to shock therapy.
Yeah, so that's a lot of fun. That's so cool. Now, of course, when a movie is as successful as Jaws was, then Hollywood
Not talking about this show.
needs to go back to
Don't
the
do it.
well.
We're
We
having a
have
good
to.
time. Don't do it.
We have some time to kill.
Damn it.
So, now let's start with Jaws 2.
Okay.
Jaws 2, which came out, I have this on my second sheet of notes here,
Burn your sheet after the show's done.
came out in 1978. Now, Jaws was a phenomenon.
Yep.
So they go back to the well. They say, okay, we need to do a sequel. Now, there are some interesting things about the sequel. One is the poster. The Jaws 2 poster is awesome. There's a woman on skis.
I don't disagree.
And the shark is coming out of the water behind. That poster alone is iconic.
Yep.
The tagline has transcended anything that the original Jaws had produced. The tagline for Jaws 2 was just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. And that that was the best thing about the whole movie, was that awesome tagline. And because people just could not get enough of Jaws, it was a huge hit.
Yep,
Earned
top 5.
$208 million on a $20 million budget. And now, the movie itself, I recently rewatched it, and it's not great. It has its moments.
Yes.
But it's sort of, it has more in common with Friday the 13th than it does the original Jaws, in that young teenagers are getting picked off in creative ways, one after another.
I will never forgive the Hollywood suits for being suits, because had they exhibited patience, Spielberg would have been available.
Yeah.
And he was open to doing it. He initially wasn't.
Yeah.
Because they had Schneider, and he would have, if they had Roy Scheider, they could have gotten Hooper back, because they reference Hooper in the movie. He actually went on that shark.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they said, because Brody's trying to reach him, because
Yeah.
he says, I have another shark problem, and he would have come, but he's all the way in Australia.
Yeah.
He's not going to make it back in time.
Yeah. Now, Roy Scheider did come back for Jaws 2. He did not want to take part in that. He hated every moment of it. I think they just threw enough money at him until he said yes. And so even though I don't think his performance necessarily suffers in the film, but he just did not want to be there. And from what I heard, he just didn't get along with the director and just casting crew.
We'll make the shark bigger and make it like a Phantom of the Opera, so half its face is gone.
Yeah. And that that was fairly iconic when they threw gasoline on it and lit him on fire. So throughout the rest of the film, half his face is burned. And then, the ending with the power cable, I remember as a teenager seeing that in the theater.
That's one of those moments where
like, kind of interesting. Like here's Roy Scheider banging on this power cable, drawing the shark to him, and he clamps down on the power cable and electrocutes.
And the helicopter scene, the helicopter pilot getting
that pulling the helicopter into the water. So it does have its moments, but that's all it is. It's a collection of moments, not a ton of character development. We really never get to know the teens that gets picked off one by one. So really, you're just watching. The entertainment is watching the creative ways that these people get picked off.
And they shouldn't have tried to address it, but they tried. They said, could it be possible that when one shark dies, another shark, sensing comes in, and that lady's like she's the I don't know, the oceanographer. She's like, sharks don't do revenge, Chief Brody. It just walks away. I'm like, yep. Yeah.
And what was the fourth movie called? Jaws: The Revenge.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It was So Jaws 2 on Rotten Tomatoes is at 56% and 40%.
Way too high.
Yeah. Then
I'll fix that.
And Nick, you might want to take a bathroom break or something, because following Jaws 2 was Jaws 3D in 1983.
Is that the one with Michael Caine?
No, he was in The Revenge.
This is the one with Dennis Quaid.
Dennis Quaid was in Jaws.
And Louis
3D.
Gossett Jr.
Now,
so mad.
This was the problem with these movies and these sequels that came out in the 70s and 80s. They were so bad, but they made money.
Oh, sorry.
They made money.
This is Leah Thompson, Marty's.
Was she in that?
Yeah,
Really?
she was the girl that got bit in the leg.
Okay,
Oh.
I can't bring myself to sit down and watch these, but Jaws 3D earned $88 million on an $18 million budget. Its Rotten Tomatoes score 11% and 17%. And then, of course, now Michael Caine steps in. Jaws: The Revenge. I thought sharks don't.
This man has a distinguished career. If I point this out to him, he will never. It's like Dennis Quaid getting nominated. The man did was in The Substance.
Yeah.
And they say, Dennis Quaid. I'm like, yeah, you did Jaws 3, buddy. You'll never forget that.
So Jaws: The Revenge came out in 1987. Made money. It wasn't a box office smash by any means, but it earned $52 million on a $23 million budget. Its Rotten Tomatoes scores 2% and 15%. Its score from film critics is like a gallon of milk in the grocery store. 2%. Just awful. And then that spawned jokes like when you go see Back to the Future 2. There's Jaws
19.
15 or whatever. Yeah, 19, and it's in holograph, form or whatever.
It almost gets Marty.
Yeah. And during that time period, we were seeing endless Rocky sequels and stuff like that. It was just Hollywood had sequelitis, which we're sort of reliving today. Everything that seems to come out today is a sequel, prequel, or reboot.
Wasn't the guy who played Michael in Jaws: The Revenge also in The Last Starfighter? He's the
main character?
I think, isn't he?
I don't think so.
I could have sworn that he's the guy.
I'd have to look.
You're talking about 4?
Yeah,
Jaws
number
4?
4.
That's the cast.
Lance Guest as Michael Brody?
No.
Okay, I know it's not him. No, wait. Yes.
Yeah. It's a kid from The Last Starfighter.
But he was the main guy.
Okay, no, maybe.
I don't know if he was the main guy.
Maybe parts in it. But,
all right, you're gonna have me looking.
okay,
that
no,
up
but
now,
because so he maybe not the main, but he's in The Last Starfighter.
So his name was Alex Rogan, Beta Alex, in Last Starfighter.
Is that the main character's name? I don't know. But
Yeah, I'll have to look it up. I don't remember. All right, so again,
Yeah, he is the main kid.
Oh,
Yep.
all
oh,
right.
it hurts.
Huh?
I wanted to be wrong
Interesting.
so badly.
I need to
All right.
watch that. Is it good? Last Starfighter?
Yeah, I'd watch it.
Well, we talked about
Yeah.
The Last Starfighter when we were talking about computer-generated imagery.
Oh, yeah. You said
And
it wasn't great.
It's a movie that's ripe for a remake
Yes.
because it's a great story and all the live action stuff with actors and stuff, I think is great. And then it gets to the space battle scenes, which look like an arcade game.
It's like an Atari. They just film this off the Atari.
Graphics by Atari. Yeah, it was awful, and that needs to be revisited. So it's not a bad movie. I enjoy it. I saw it in the theater. I liked it, but the last time I revisited it, the graphics are just terrible.
Lorraine Brody's wife is Sid Sheinberg's real life wife.
Okay.
So how did he allow his wife to be in Jaws 4? Or were they divorced at the time? My God.
Punishment. That's spousal abuse.
I want to headline a movie. All right, honey. Jaws the Revenge.
Now, again, not only does a successful film spawn endless sequels, it also spawns endless ripoffs. And this is going to be sort of a fun discussion because I have here in front of me,
in your hands,
in my hands, a list of movies that came out in the wake, pardon the pun, of Jaws, starting with a movie called Orca, which was the name of the boat in Jaws.
Yes.
But this movie is about a killer whale.
Yeah.
And it stars Bo Derek and Richard Harris. And it's kind of funny. There's a scene in Orca where the killer whale kills a great white shark. So this is just arrogance on the part of the filmmakers, basically bragging that our movie is going to take a bite out of Jaws. And it did not. As a matter of fact, and I find this so fascinating, I just learned this fairly recently.
Because you sympathize with Orca.
Yeah, you're cheering, you're rooting for the orca, and it's almost kind of like a Jonah and the whale, or no, Captain Ahab, the great white whale. This has a similar story where Richard Harris is just obsessed with chasing down this killer whale. But here's what's interesting, and again, I only learned this fairly recently. There is no recorded incident in the history of ocean attacks where a wild killer whale has ever attacked or killed a human being. Not a single incident in the wild.
That's interesting. You think by just sheer probability it might have happened.
Or just mistake. Like, someone's paddling out there, they got a black leather,
look like a seal.
Scuba suit on, and you think an orca would take a bite and go, "Ooh, that's not a seal." It's never happened. The only deaths that have come from an orca or killer whale are in the enclosures, the captive killer whale who was playfully. There's one incident where the killer whale accidentally drowned the trainer. It was being playful and kept holding the trainer underwater, and in front of a live audience, she drowned. But no killer whale has ever taken a bite out of a human being, and they just somehow know instinctively that that's not our prey. That's not what we do. Even though over the past few years there have been recorded incidents of orcas attacking boats and disabling boats and sinking boats. And that might be some sort of a revenge factor. Maybe one of their, pod got hit by a propeller or something, and they're like, "You son of a bitch."
Yeah.
And they're taking out boats, and it's still going on to this day.
Here's your selfie. Get out of here.
But yeah, I find it absolutely fascinating that there's not a single recorded incident of a killer whale killing a human being, which makes this movie seem that much more ridiculous.
It's got an 8% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Not a great movie. Bo Derek was pretty, and I do remember a scene. She had a broken leg, and she had like a cast, and the orca bites her cast off or something. Yeah.
And the leg.
So, the leg came with it. It's not like he surgically removed the cast.
It was like, hang on. There, your cast is off.
And I have to say, some of these movies that I'm talking about here, I saw in the theater when they came out, including Orca. So I was one of those movie-going audience members that wanted more. Give me more. Another movie that I saw in 1977, I don't have much information on it, but it was a movie called Tentacles, released in 1977, about a killer octopus, which, you would think on paper, when you think about the history of sea travel, that there were tales of giant squid attacking ships and killing crew and stuff. So you think on paper, this might be an interesting movie, but we're talking from critics on Rotten Tomatoes, 0%.
Oh my God!
Wow.
And from movie-going audiences, 10%. I saw Tentacles in the theater. I don't remember much about it, but it was a box office
This
disaster.
almost feels like you're confessing to an intervention where we're like, Joe had a problem. He was looking for he wanted
give me
that fix.
anything,
It was
something.
When he got to Killer Sloth, we had to talk to Joe. Yeah, there it is. Andrew showed me a picture.
John Huston and Henry Fonda were in it.
I do not remember.
Shelley
that.
Winters.
Henry Fonda.
Jeez, you
Yeah,
got me wanting to revisit it now.
Boy.
Man,
Yeah,
that's some cast.
and they had to bring in an Italian hottie.
Yeah. Wow. Odelia Boccardo. Interesting. Okay.
Oh, good.
All right. Man,
I'm interested.
you've kind of piqued my
I know.
curiosity now. Now, these next couple of movies are kind of fun. They're kind of cheesy, goofy, but again, this is direct response to the success of Jaws. In 1978, we got our first installment of Piranha. And this movie was directed by Joe Dante, who went on to do great things, including Gremlins.
And
What else?
we
did
just
Joe
talked
Dante
about it on our podcast with my sister and that other chick.
Oh, what was it? You're gonna have to
The
look it up.
Burbs.
The Burbs. Okay, yeah.
There we
So
go.
Joe Dante gave us Piranha, and believe it or not, the scores on Rotten Tomatoes are fairly respectable. 72% from critics, 53% from audience. Now, the follow-up, Piranha 2, has a very interesting footnote to it. So, Piranha 2, The Spawning, released in 1982, is the directorial debut of
We just looked. Mr.
James
Cameron.
Cameron.
Oh my God, no!
Was introduced to
I've
the
never heard
world
this.
What is happening
as
right
the
now?
director of Piranha 2.
His
And-
publicist is going to nuke us.
But imagine being a young director and you're given that opportunity. It's not critically acclaimed by any means. On Rotten Tomatoes, 5% and 12%. But it led to some of the greatest movies ever made.
It's like David Fincher's first film was. Say it, Nick.
No. I'm having one of those scanners moments now. No, wait,
I won't
no,
put a
no.
shotgun to your head.
No, wait. What did Dave? No, now I can't remember what. Fincher-
So he did Alien 3, and
Oh,
then
that's right.
then he went on to do some awesome movies.
Yeah.
7, I think, was right after
Yeah.
that, and
Right.
Oh,
So
Alien
you
3.
got to start somewhere,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
You
You
gotta
can't.
start somewhere.
Yeah, porn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. That's
So-
where
Jeez.
leave Stallone out of this.
Oh boy, that's right. Oh.
I don't know what you guys are talking about, but I have to look it up after the show.
No, do not.
So it says I don't know anything about Piranha, but it says only the first one is a parody of Jaws. There's like
Hmm.
Piranha 2, Piranha.
Yeah, I don't know about
Piranha
all the other ones
3D,
that came out.
Piranha 3DD, which came out in 2012. That
That's
might be
hysterical.
that might be a porn parody, Double D. So we'll see.
Now, I may have you look up another movie because I have zero information on this. All I have written in my notes is that in 1978, we were treated to a movie called Barracuda. And at this point, I may have just tapped out as a youngster and was kind of done with these
Are
kind
we
of
just
movies.
looking for any fish to do?
Any
Right.
animal.
Well, this is the response to the success of
Oh wait a
Jaws.
minute. Then on your page, I'm going to
That's the
ask
same year that the song came out by Heart. No,
Oh,
what 1 year difference? but still.
Barracuda.
now I'm going to ask you this: if this movie's on there, is a certain deep blue sea on there?
We're
shark
gonna get to that in a
ate me.
second because these were movies that came out in the wake of Jaws, and
Okay.
we're trying to capitalize on the success. We're gonna get into some modern shark movies in a moment. The last movie I wanted to talk about that is such a blatant ripoff that Universal accused creators of plagiarism and had it pulled from the U.S. market. It was a movie called The Last Shark, released in 1981, and was a deliberate ripoff of Jaws and was accused of plagiarism. So
I can't even find
That sounds
it.
like a documentary title, "The Last Shark." Like
The
we
Last Shark, yeah.
Oh, well, it's on Wikipedia. It's under Great White. It's an Italian film.
Is it?
Is that what you're?
Oh, I think that's
So-
what. Yeah.
It says Great White, aka The Last
Last
Shark.
Shark. Yeah. And so I guess there were lax copyright laws in Europe, so they got away with it.
Yep.
But here in the U.S., they're like, no, that doesn't fly here. So they got it pulled from screens here. So, and again, now my curiosity is piqued. I'm kind of curious to watch it and see what the similarities are.
Yeah.
So, all right. So now let's go into, movies that pay debt of gratitude to Jaws. We'll call these modern shark movies. Let's see. I should have put these in order of release, but I think I just kind of jotted them down as I found them online. Let's talk about the Shallows. It came out in 2016.
That was entertaining. That's with the
Blake Lively.
Yeah.
Now, if I remember correctly, she's kind of stranded on like a rocky thing.
Outcropping,
Yeah, and it's surrounded by
and
sharks.
the tide's coming in. If the tide comes in, she's toast. Because then the shark can get
So
her.
I've never seen it, but it's got 78% on Rotten Tomatoes. So we could call that, I guess, one of the better modern shark movies. Now, we have to talk about this. This is so silly. I almost kind of want to wait to get to this, but there's a whole series of movies under the title of Sharknado.
Okay. Here we go.
First one came out in 2013. Believe it or not, 77% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I haven't seen any of these. I had no interest in any of the Sharknado movies. But the first one starred Tara Reid, Ian Ziering, spawned 5 sequels. Sharknado 2, the second one. Sharknado 3, oh, hell no. Sharknado, The Fourth Awakens. And the last Sharknado, It's About Time. I got to give them props for these creative film titles. But, I'm just not interested in that sort of thing. And from what I've seen, the effects are pretty low budget and awful. And
yeah, that's the problem with the movie, the effects.
Yeah. Now I will do my little Forrest Gump moment here. I remember as I was in LA for a show called Comics Beer and Sci-Fi. We had been shooting at the LA Comic Con, and we were at the airport waiting to board our plane, and we were sitting in a little cafeteria at the airport, and in walked Ian Ziering. And luckily, someone told me how to pronounce his name, because I did not know his name was pronounced Ian. I would have said Ian. But when I saw him, and my friend had told me that it was Ian, I was like, hey, Ian. And he looked terrified, like I was just going to lay into him. But all I did was say hi, and he seemed relieved that I wasn't going to lay into him. And he sat down and enjoyed his lunch in silence. But it was interesting running into him at the airport cafeteria in L.A.
Because had you called him Ian, he would have forced you to be in the Sharknado 6.
Now, I haven't seen them. Have you gentlemen seen the Sharknado movies?
Nope. No.
Interesting. I thought at least one of you would have found some value in them.
You basically have just said, I've never smashed my hand with a hammer. Interesting. None of you have ever self-mutilated? No, Joe, we're not.
I'm actually surprised.
Gary Busey is in The Fourth Awakens.
That makes perfect sense.
I might need to watch it.
That's
no,
awesome.
My God, don't.
That's hysterical.
In the film, Finn, Shepard, and his allies, 5 years after the last Sharknado, contend with a group of Sharknado variants, such as Cownado and a Lightning-nado.
Yeah, go ahead and watch it.
Yeah.
Let's see where it's streaming.
Oh, man. I would need therapy after that. Moving on, there was a movie that came out in 2003 called Open Water. I don't recall it. I want to say
inspired by true events.
Now that's the husband and wife divers that were abandoned by their boat and were left to just kind of tread water.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly. I haven't
At least
seen
that's
it.
the
but
story
I remember.
behind it.
Yeah. 71% on Rotten Tomatoes. You guys see it? Any comments on Open Water?
No.
Now, you touched on this a moment ago. I saw this movie in the theater, and I actually kind of enjoyed it for the cheesy movie that it was. It kind of felt like a B movie, but it was Deep Blue Sea. Came out in 1999. 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. Starring Thomas Jane, who I worked with on 61. He played Mickey Mantle in 61. And Samuel Jackson. And, corny, cheesy, but it had a certain level
Stellan
of
Skarsgård was in
entertainment.
that movie. It had a Saffron Burrows. It had a pretty interesting cast.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Was Kari Wurr in Deep Blue Sea? She used to be The pretty girl on Remote Control. What was she in? I'm gonna have to look that up.
She's been
she was in
Eight-Legged Freaks.
Andrew, look up the cast of Deep Blue Sea when you get a chance.
Had Michael Rappaport on it.
Yeah, I've never seen Deep Blue Sea.
I had LL Cool J.
Oh yeah. Now
the cook.
who ate it? Well, I remember there's a scene where an actor is standing like on a walkway and there's water near him.
Samuel.
And the shark came out and it was so shocking. Like it's like
CGI
having
so bad,
your biggest star in the movie get taken out by the shark. That was pretty funny.
So you're looking for an actress in this?
I'm looking for an actress in Deep Blue Sea named Kari Wurr, and I can't remember if she was in that or some other shark.
So it gives like the top 8 people, and name's not on there.
Okay. All right.
Do you know how to spell her name?
Kari. Kari. Yeah.
W.
She used to be on Remote Control, and then she went on to bigger and better things. While you're doing that, the next movie on my list, 47 Meters Down. I have no recollection of it. I don't know what the plot line. It came out in 2017, 53% on Rotten Tomatoes. Another movie that I saw in theaters that, again, I enjoyed just for the deliberate cheesiness was The Meg, 2018, starring Jason Statham and Rainn Wilson. 47% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty low.
Count on the Chinese to adopt the worst habits of Hollywood. Because the novel written by Steve Alton was actually interesting. Like it felt like the 21st century. Like it could take the torch from Jaws.
Yeah.
Because you read it, you're like, oh wow, this is actually terrifying and frightening. And when I heard they were going to adapt it, and it's for the longest time, I said, oh, I wonder who they're going to get to play the actual doctor, the PhD, who Jonas, the main character in the book, is a intellectual. He's traumatized by this. They're going to cast Jason Statham. I'm like, all right, we're done.
Gonna punch that Meg in the mouth.
It's Joe. You saw how it started. It hits a sub. It hits a military sub.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. The shark would have turned its brain into confetti.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, if you think the Meg was bad, they follow that up with Meg 2, The Trench. That came out in 2023, 27% on Rotten Tomatoes. Jason Statham comes back. I tried watching it on some streaming service. I sat on my couch, and I could not get through it. It was one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And the science in this film, and I've said this before on our podcast, that Neil deGrasse Tyson would just be screaming at his TV set because they have these characters when their ship is damaged walking on the surface or on the floor of the ocean in the deepest part of the ocean, the Mariana Trench, in these skin tight diving suits. They would be crushed like a paper cup. I don't care how much pressurization you put in the suit. They have them strolling at the bottom of the ocean like they're in the field, and I just could not do it. I could not do it. It was ridiculous.
The Chinese who funded this movie again saw Meg and said, hold my beer.
It was awful. It was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. At least what I was able to stomach until I turned it off. So, Andrew, did you find anything out? Did you look up anything?
Yeah, so the closest thing I could find that actress was in, she was in Anaconda.
Ah, okay.
The only other female in it that was not Saffron Burrows was this chick, Jacqueline McKenzie, who I don't know who that is.
I don't know who that is.
No.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for Kari Weir because when she was in Anaconda, she was out. You can't be the same thing with Jennifer Lopez.
All right.
Because you're like, I'm attractive. You are Kari.
Yeah.
Then there's Jennifer.
All right. So that's all I have. Do you guys have any final thoughts on Jaws and all of the terrible sequels and spin-offs and rip-offs?
I love Jaws. I don't know anything else that you're talking about. I don't acknowledge them, and therefore they're not real to me.
There you go. Just keep telling yourself that.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about like any of the ancillary stuff, but I'm just glad that you had the idea to do this, Joe, for the 50th, because I don't know if I would have watched that on my own. Not that it's not a great movie or anything, but I did need to watch it because it had been probably 20 years since I watched it. And like I said, I wasn't really paying attention. So it's like almost like watching it for the first time. And of course, I loved it.
It is worthy of a masterclass in filmmaking.
It is, and in any list of greatest movies ever made, this movie has to be included.
It's in top 10.
When you think about the obstacles that Spielberg faced, and you look at all the performances and what they managed to do, not only while filming, but in the editing room, and then the music on top of all that, they composed an unforgettable, iconic film that will stand the test of time for a long, long time. It doesn't feel dated.
No,
it's
that's
incredible.
the thing. When I was watching, I'm like, yes, this is 1975, but it holds up so well.
Yeah.
I hope there are enough executives that are still alive. Do not remake this movie. It does not need to be remade. Just leave it.
No, they can't. Do your own thing. But
Yeah.
I did come across one cool thing about the editor we were talking about, Verna Fields. Do you remember the scene? I think it's towards the end. I'm trying to remember what death scene this is happening, but something's going crazy in the water. And Roy Scheider's sitting in the chair at the beach. And then as people walk by, the camera cuts closer to him and closer to him.
Yeah, well, no, we talked about that earlier. That was that Hitchcock where the camera moves and zooms at the same time.
I'm sorry. I must have zoned out.
No.
But she called that a wipe by cut. That's what she calls wipe by
I think you're referring to something
Yeah.
different because the
That's a
scene
straight
that we
shot.
talked
It's a
about earlier
continuous
was
shot.
one continuous movement with the camera moving. The wipe by cut, I'm not sure what that's referring
It says,
to.
this innovation, which Fields herself named the wipe by cut, can be used when a character is filmed from a distance using a telephoto lens. The cut to a different framing of the character occurs during the interruption by a figure who passes between the camera and the character.
Okay.
I know what he's talking about.
All right,
When the girl is screaming,
Yeah.
it's that's a real bad hat, Harry. So before that happens, so he's looking at someone on the beach. He hears a scream. He looks over, and then
Yeah. All right. So that's around the same
Yeah.
time. So that's not the same scene we were talking about.
Okay.
But yeah, so Pete, you'll have someone pass in front of the camera, and as they clear the camera's zoomed in.
Yeah.
So that's carefully crafted in the editing.
because it's
room.
building because he's on edge. He's on pins and needles. He's
Yeah.
he's looking at like every little thing is triggering him,
Yeah.
and then it happens.
Yeah.
And then when it happens, it then comes that continuous shot. Because
Exactly.
Then the boy dies because when the girl's screaming, he's like, "Huh?" And then the guy's like, "You don't go in the water, do you, Chief? That's a real bad hat."
Yeah. So no, there's a lot of cool stuff going on in that film, and it's just iconic. It's just so great.
We can't end this without mentioning the damn mayor.
The mayor,
Oh, the
who
mayor.
just doesn't listen to anybody, and then come Jaws 2, he's at it again.
That dude in that movie gets in this like, go in the water. I'm like, my man, you were wearing a full suit on 4th of July on the beach. You're asking me to go in the water? Get your ass in the water.
Yeah, and poor Chief Brody gets smacked across the face, and it's like, it's the mayor that should have gotten smacked. He's the one who said
when
leave the
the mom comes.
she's wearing black.
And it's one of the best Dreyfus lines. I think you're going to ignore this problem until it swims up and bites you in the ass.
That's right. And the last line of the film that I want to leave our listeners with is keep kicking.
Oh, yeah.
Come to the movies, watch Charlie Chaplin, and put some sunshine into your day. Forget the hard times, come to the movies, and try to laugh your troubles away.